LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the February 28th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've picked out 36 of the weekend's best clips for what should be a really informative show for you all tonight. Before I get to the topics, I should let you know that this is my fair use media analysis and political commentary that I do every Sunday, where I comment on both the politicians, the newsmakers, and also sometimes the hosts, the media itself, on the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. You can see the three topics I'm covering listed down in the video description, and if you're watching this as a recorded show, you should see time indexes down there so you can skip to the topic that most interests you. I also have put a link down in the video description to this clip list of the 36 clips I'm using, and if you can understand my kind of cryptic notes, you can follow along all 36 clips, and it at least will tell you what the topic is and which network it came from, and generally who is speaking in the clip, although sometimes there are typos. But you can follow that along on the clip list if that interests you. And the three topics are, there's going to be one clip about the FBI versus Apple case at the end. That's a clip from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, the political comedy I like to add in. I have 4 clips from Real Time with Bill Maher from last Friday night as the political comedy tonight. And I'll start with one of those in just a minute to start off the Republican side of the 2016 presidential race, which has about 2/3 of the clips, and then about 1/3 of the clips on the Democratic side. Just because there are several more candidates. Only Bernie Sanders did interviews this morning on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, there was Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie. I didn't even take a John Kasich clip, although he was out there, but I did take several clips from the three frontrunners, especially many Donald Trump clips that I will get to, including one where he won't disavow the KKK, and then there's this kind of funny Ted Cruz clip where, well, funny in kind of a way that makes you queasy, where he accuses Donald Trump of having mob ties, and I think he may accuse him of being associated with the mob boss who was parodied on The Simpsons, which is kind of weird because Ted Cruz does Simpsons imitations, but I will get to all that. But first I want to start with a political comedy clip on the topic of the Republican side of the race. This is Bill Maher talking about that really nasty, chaotic Republican debate last Thursday. Saturday morning, I finally got my clip roundup with copyright claims on it uploaded with no monetization. I hope you had a chance to watch that, where I took the 12 best clips from that debate, and I also concurred that it broke down into chaos and nastiness, and here's how Bill Maher covered that in his monologue for about 30 seconds on Friday over in this clip.
I always say I know why you're happy, but I don't know why you're happy tonight. I mean, did you see that Republican debate last year? OMG. I just want to say, if you are one of the people who has always gotten angry with me for saying this is a stupid country, I accept your apology. I mean, even for them, this was a new low. Presidential, they were menopausal. Are you
So that was kind of funny, although it was misogynistic, the mix you often get with Bill Maher, the humor mixed with misogyny or some other kind of negative thing. You know, sometimes I think Bill Maher is getting more and more like Dennis Miller. Back on February 14th, I saw him live, and about 20 minutes of his set on Muslims was a little bit too much, I thought. But there's nothing about Muslims from Bill Maher in this clip, although there is some stuff about Apple. And anyway, I want to move on to the actual real news clips on the Republican side. First, I want to show how ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos covered the what's been going on in the Republican race, mostly since the debate, and how nasty it's gotten on the trail. And this is this is ABC reporter John Karl talking about developments in the Republican race in the last couple days over here.
Of winning it all, Donald Trump is facing his biggest test yet, a sustained assault of personal insults, substantive attacks, and mockery that looks like it could have been designed by Trump himself.
On the campaign trail Saturday, Donald Trump predicted a Super Tuesday rout.
Hopefully we're going to win Tennessee. We're going to win everything. I think we're even really have a great chance to win Texas.
And after his double-digit wins in South Carolina and Nevada, some establishment Republicans finally agree he could actually win this thing.
Trump, he's got the momentum. I think there's more than a 50% chance he's the nominee.
Nowhere was that hammered home more than with Friday's shocking endorsement.
We need a first-class president, and we're going to have it in Donald Trump.
New Jersey's tough guy Governor Chris Christie, who once mocked Trump as the entertainer-in-chief, is now in his corner. But with Trump on the verge of an insurmountable lead, Marco Rubio has decided desperate times call for desperate measures.
Well, I don't know anything about bankrupting four companies. You bankrupted four companies. I don't know anything about starting a university. That was a fake university.
Throughout the campaign, Rubio has insisted he wouldn't go after his fellow Republicans.
And I know that there's this craving in the media for people to attack each other, but I've never been a campaign that attacks people.
Now he's using Trump's playbook, mocking the frontrunner with personal insults.
How can a person with the worst spray tan in America attack me on Twitter for wearing makeup? He said he wanted to sue me. He's going to sue me. He should sue whoever did that to his face.
Besides the insult assault, Rubio has a new label for the billionaire businessman.
He is a con artist.
Con artist?
I will never stop until we keep a con man from taking over the party of Reagan.
Trump and his new wingman were happy to return fire.
This lightweight Rubio, total lightweight, and little mouth on him. Bing, 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 bing.
When the heat was on Senator Rubio in those debates, you saw what happened. He melted. He melted.
As the campaign turns into a food fight, the question is Rubio's aggressive strategy too little, too late? With so much at stake, Senator Lindsey Graham had a colorful diagnosis for the state of the Republican Party.
My party is going bat crazy.
And John Karl joins us now along with the...
So I thought that was a pretty good summary of what's been going on in the Republican race between the debate clip roundup I did on Friday, or some of that actually took place on Friday, and when I did the debate clip roundup Friday evening, I talked about the way Marco Rubio had really stepped up his attacks, calling Donald Trump a con artist, and really it's Marco Rubio unleashed, but it's probably too little too late. And the problem is that the trajectory of the polls right now, first of all, show, Donald Trump is most likely, unless there's some big turnaround in the polls in the next couple days. Super Tuesday is March 1st, this Tuesday, and then March 15th, there are a couple big states like Florida, and I believe Ohio is up that day. Texas is up on March 1st, which is Super Tuesday. And so sometime between March 1st and March 15th, Donald Trump may wrap this up. He may not, but the next clip I'm going to show is actually from NBC's Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, talking about the latest NBC Marist polls that Ted Cruz looks like he may win Texas, but Donald Trump is basically ahead in all the other states, including Ohio and Florida. I don't remember if those states are in this poll. And then the really key part about this is at the very end, what Chuck Todd says about the update to this poll, which I will discuss after you watch that 1-minute clip here.
To the wild Republican race, and we'll go state by state in that one. In Georgia, Donald Trump has a 7-point lead over both Cruz and Rubio, 30% for Trump. Cruz and Rubio tied at 23. In Tennessee, Trump's lead appears more durable. He's at 40%, followed farther behind by Cruz sitting in second and Rubio a close third, and then the rest of the field. But in Texas, it's a different story. Ted Cruz is hanging on to his must-win home state, and he has a comfortable 13-point lead over Trump. Rubio is a distant third there. Now, these polls were taken before Marco Rubio's strong performance in that Thursday night Republican debate. So we asked our pollsters to recontact as many people as possible. We talked to 30% of the respondents in all 3 states to see whether Rubio's debate performance changed anything. In short, it did not. Trump, Rubio, and Cruz all held on to roughly 90% of their supporters. In fact, in the raw ballot test, Rubio moved up all of 1 point. So we've got 3 presidential candidates with us.
So I don't know, the 30% retest of that poll, I'm not sure how reliable that is. That there may be some sort of bias in who's available to be retested on a poll. Like maybe they're the people who are like stupidest or are like poorest, or who knows, there could be some like weird demographic bias in that type of where you only get 30% of the original people, and when you originally do a poll, you make sure that your sample is a sample that reflects the population that you're trying to poll and who you're saying the poll sample represents. I guess that's kind of, sorry, that's not very well put, but I think you know what I mean. And but to the extent that that's accurate, and I'm not a big believer in polls, I think polls in general, you know, I've criticized polls in the past when it had to do with like Islamic countries, where I think they're even less accurate when certain people use them to say that Muslims believe this or Muslims believe that based on poll results. I mean, in these political contexts, I think polls are kind of like, you know, the 5-day weather report or the 10-day weather report, where, you know, it's good information to have, but you might want to keep an umbrella in the trunk or whatever. You know, it's like it probably will happen, but it's actually very likely that it won't exactly happen the way it's been predicted, and there's some chance that it will be very, very different from what's predicted. So I want to move on to the last set of polls here before I get to some Trump and other clips. This is the CBS Marist Wall Street Journal poll, which has similar results to the one I just showed from NBC. This is John Dickerson over on Face the Nation, giving the 5 to 10 to 15 day weather forecast for Super Tuesday on March 1st, and then some other big states. I think they include some March 15 states. I can't remember in this clip.
2 days to go until Super Tuesday, where there are primaries or caucuses in 12 states. And according to our CBS News Battleground Tracker, things are looking good for the frontrunners. In Virginia, Donald Trump is at the top of the Republican field with 40%. Marco Rubio follows him with 27%, and Ted Cruz is in third at 22%. Georgia is also showing 40% for Trump. Ted Cruz is running second at 29%. Marco Rubio is at 22%. But in his home state of Texas, it's Ted Cruz who is up by 11 points over Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio is in third with 19%. John Kasich and Ben Carson are both much further behind in those 3 states. We'll have more battleground poll numbers.
So that's the CBS Battleground Tracker poll, and it's just Super Tuesday states there, and it's very similar to the one you saw from the NBC Marist poll. Was that the? Or wait, I'm starting to mix up my polls. But having shown all those polls for what they're worth, I want to move on to some of the candidate clips. First, I'm going to show several. Well, I took almost all of NBC's Meet the Press. Chuck Todd's interview on NBC's Meet the Press of Donald Trump, but I wanted to break it up a little. First, I'll show one clip where I thought Chuck Todd asked a good question about what deal did you make to get Chris Christie to endorse you, because that was really the big news and may have actually stopped Marco Rubio's momentum from the Thursday night debate, because the next morning Chris Christie came and endorsed Donald Trump, and Chris Christie is kind of like Marco Rubio's kryptonite, I guess they say. And anyway, so when Chuck Todd asked, how'd you make this deal, you'd think maybe Donald Trump would actually be coaxed into, because he loves talking about his deals, maybe he would say, but he didn't actually say that they, anything that he promised, though I'm going to show a couple clips of Chris Christie afterwards that makes me think there may have been a promise. But first, here's Donald Trump's explanation of what happened on Meet the Press this morning in this clip.
Good morning.
Let me just ask you, how'd you make the deal to get Chris Christie to endorse you?
Well, it was just somebody that I really wanted. I must tell you, I was going to leave a little time go by before I called him. I did not call him. He called me. He saw what was happening. He said, Donald, you have a movement going. Like Chuck, this afternoon, I think we have 25,000 people in Alabama. We ended up moving to a football stadium because you couldn't hold. I mean, what we have going is incredible. Yesterday in Arkansas, we had 15,000. We had 15,000 people in a hangar in Tennessee.
Right.
It's amazing what's going on. And he said, there's a movement going on, and I'd like to be part of it. And I was very happy. I was getting ready to call him, and he called me. And having Chris is a great honor.
Well, I tell you, he seems like a changed man when it comes to you. There was a time he wasn't such a believer. Let me play a few quotes.
He's been a very successful businessman. He has lots of talents. He has absolutely no ability in this area.
So be very careful about candidates who stand up and say, ban all Muslims from coming to the country. Ridiculous.
It'll be a beautiful, wonderful wall. It'll be an incredible wall. The wall will be unbelievable. We're not picking an entertainer-in-chief. We're not casting a TV show.
I don't think it would be in the best interest of our party to have someone who I don't think would be an effective president to be the nominee.
Mr. Trump, as I can attest to, if anybody had said that, you would have unloaded on them on Twitter and sort of pulverized them. What made you accept Christie's change of heart?
Well, you know, I heard those comments, and they were made in a rather low-key manner, and they were made in smaller locations, and they never got out very much, so I never really had to go wild. But I did hear a little bit about him. But that's called welcome to the wonderful world of politics, I think. You know, he's been a friend of mine. He's been a really good guy and a good friend of mine for a long time. And, you know, just having his endorsement's amazing. We did 4 stops between the last 2 days. And he's introduced me, and the place loves him. The people love him. He's tough. He's smart. And we just get along very well. So, you know, but that's called politics, in all fairness, Chuck. I think you've heard about it before, right?
Fair enough. He certainly has been quite the opening act for you the last 2 days.
Quite the opening act is true, I guess. And one of the things about those questions there that I wanted to show, the follow-up where Chuck Todd showed those clips of Chris Christie saying some fairly harsh things about Donald Trump. Well, Chris Christie was over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos exclusively, the only one of the 5 shows Chris Christie went on. And I'm going to start off first showing George Stephanopoulos ask about something that a politician from my state, or a businesswoman politician, Meg Whitman, who ran for Senate here, and I think she would, I always get her mixed up with Carly Fiorina because they're both like Republican businesswomen who went into politics in California, but she was apparently one of Chris Christie's campaign finance chairs, and when Chris Christie endorsed Donald Trump, she said some really negative things that you'll hear George Stephanopoulos read the statement from Meg Whitman, and then he does a follow-up with some other people, and it's a possible split in the Republican Party if Donald Trump gets the nomination. And then I'm going to show the first of the quotes that George Stephanopoulos asked Chris Christie about, of the negative things he said about Donald Trump, but I don't think he took the harshest one. This includes the thing about the wall. And I will talk about all of that a little more after you watch that. Oh, and you'll notice before he starts the interview with Chris Christie, he shows a brief clip of Chris Christie's endorsement of Donald Trump, and you'll see that Chris Christie mentions the very first part of this clip. Chris Christie is mentioning that Donald Trump is someone who keeps his promise, which and you'll see in the second clip I show that's also something Chris Christie emphasizes, which is sort of, there's a subtext in there that makes me think maybe Donald Trump did make him some kind of promise. But anyway, I'll talk about all of that after you watch that clip over here.
America keeps its word again. Donald Trump is someone who, when he makes a promise, he keeps it.
And Chris Christie is here this morning with us here on This Week. Thank you for joining us, Governor. And let's begin. You heard Hugh Hewitt at the top of the program read from that Meg Whitman statement. Your national finance co-chair says that your endorsement of Donald Trump, an astonishing display of political opportunism. She goes on to say, Donald Trump is unfit to be president. He's a dishonest demagogue who plays to our worst fears. I call on Christie donors and supporters to reject the governor and Donald Trump outright. I believe they will. For some of us, principle and country still matter.
Well, listen, I love Meg Whitman. She's a great friend to me and to Mary Pat, always has been. We obviously, from that statement, have a difference of political opinion. And that's okay. That's what makes this country great. is that people can have differences of political opinion. And so Meg has always been free to express her views, and I honor her. And we absolutely adore our relationship with her, and I'm sure it'll continue.
Some of your supporters say you promised them you would not endorse Donald Trump. Joe McQuaid, the publisher of the New Hampshire Union Leader, says you promised him on a phone call you wouldn't endorse Donald Trump.
Nah, that's just not true. He called me 2 days after the primary and said, I was just told that you're about to endorse Donald Trump. And I said to him, that's absolutely untrue. I'm not about to endorse anybody. But that's all the conversation
He didn't
was.
say you would never endorse him.
No.
Okay,
I said I wasn't endorsing him then. That's what he had a New Hampshire person on the ground tell him that. And I said, Joe, it's 2 days after the primary. Mary Pat and I are just taking a deep breath. We haven't thought about what we're going to do next in this race.
Let's talk about the policy in this campaign right now. During your campaign, you ran as a straight-talking truth teller, specific answers to America's challenges. And here's what how you told voters to question Mr. Trump.
I tell everybody who goes to a Donald Trump event, if you get to ask a question, just ask him how. First, he says he's going to build a wall across the entire border between the United States and Mexico. How? How is he going to make the Mexicans pay for the wall? How? They are a sovereign nation.
You're backing him now. What's the answer?
The answer is he will do it.
How?
The fact is, the fact is that he's going to have to answer that question, and he will. You know, George, this is February. This is February of a campaign, and let's say this: you look at everybody else on that stage. And there have been many more specifics from a lot of other folks on that stage. And that was part of my argument during the campaign. But there I am as somebody who's running for president making my argument.
We're 8 months into this campaign. The wall has been his signature issue. He says it's his go-to line whenever he needs applause. You've now had the Mexican president, 2 former Mexican presidents. The Mexican foreign minister in the Washington Post this morning calls this a racist, ignorant, and absurd proposal. You know that Mexico's not going to pay.
Well, listen, George, that's what would you expect Mexico to say? That's, of course, what they're going to say.
So what's the mechanism? How is Donald Trump going to force Mexico to pay?
Listen, I think that there is great ways to be able to use diplomacy and other tools to be able to come to compromise with nations that are both our neighbors and around the world. And we'll work on those things. And that's what leadership does. Strong leadership is able to exert those things and be able to talk to folks about what advantages and disadvantages are of certain policies. The fact of the matter is that there won't be any question about Mr. Trump's strength and his resoluteness in terms of getting the things done that he's wanted to get done. That's what his whole career has shown.
What's the answer to the how? That's
So it keeps going on. I don't want to show the whole. I think I've shown you enough of that part of the clip where you see how George Stephanopoulos was after him about that particular quote. I don't think he chose the most negative quotes from that you could have seen over in that Chuck Todd interview of Donald Trump that Chuck Todd played. Like he's an entertainer-in-chief and doesn't have the skills to be commander-in-chief, or he doesn't have the skills to do the job. That he didn't ask him any of that, although if you follow the link down in the video description to ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, you can see the whole episode, including the whole interview. I'm cutting out a big part of the middle, and then I want to show something at the end where the last of these, you said this about Donald Trump, why don't you, why are you endorsing him after you said this, is about the Muslims who celebrated in New Jersey, supposedly. Donald Trump claims that thousands of Muslims celebrated the attack on the World Trade Center in New Jersey, and he saw them celebrating, even though no one's ever been able to verify it. Anyway, you can see George Stephanopoulos trying to get into Chris Christie's New Jersey pride, asking him, isn't he slandering New Jersey, and doesn't that make him untrustworthy? And you'll see that starts Chris Christie going back into Donald Trump being trustworthy, and if he makes a promise, he keeps the promise, and I've known him for 14 years, since 2002, and that's what makes me think that Chris Christie does know that when Donald Trump makes a promise, he keeps the promise, and there's some kind of promise, probably not like vice president. I heard some pundit say he couldn't be vice president because that would be like too much of the same thing, too like East Coast, tough-talking, in-your-face guys. Although it's been done before, if you think of Bill Clinton and Al Gore, they decided to like double down on the brand and have like 2 young Southern centrist Democrats. So I suppose it could happen. But I also heard someone speculate, based on no evidence, that Chris Christie might have been offered Attorney General, but just because that's a job he'd probably like. But anyway, this is the second Chris Christie clip where he responds to the question about slandering the state of New Jersey with this Muslim celebrating falsehood from Donald Trump by saying that Donald Trump is trustworthy, he's known him a long time, and he will keep his promises. Over in this clip.
Trump is a person who can be trusted. He still maintains that he saw thousands of people celebrating in New Jersey after the 9/11 attacks. You said that didn't happen. It was not factual. So if he continues to hold that position, isn't that a slander of your state's citizens?
Oh, no, listen, I don't think he means it as that at all. It's a slander of my state's citizens. What I think, though, is when I say he can be trusted, this is a guy who, when he makes promises, he keeps them. And I've seen that over the course of a 14-year relationship with him. I didn't just meet Donald Trump on the debate stage in August, George, of 2015. I met Donald Trump in 2002 and have been friends with him since that time and gotten to know him. And the American people out there, you listen to what's happening, George. The American people see him. They see someone who's strong, who's resolute, who's tough, who's not part of the Washington, D.C. establishment, that has really messed this country up and disappointed our people, both sides of the aisle. He's going to go down there and take an entirely different approach. That's an approach that America needs. And given the other options on the stage, let me tell you something. He's the strongest, best guy to be our nominee, to beat Hillary Clinton, and to be the next president of the United States.
Governor Christie, thanks for joining us this morning.
So New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is obviously all in on the Donald Trump train, which is pretty much on its way to victory for the Republican nomination, at least, as I'll talk about a little more in a few minutes. But first, I want to show some more of the clips. I criticize the Chris Christie clips there, both for not asking tough enough questions about his previous negative comments on Donald Trump, and then I also made that commentary that I want you to let me know what you think about down in the comment section about whether Chris Christie was promised something by Donald Trump, if that was the subtext of him talking about Donald Trump keeping his promises in both the two clips I showed. Now I actually want to get back to Donald Trump. This is another clip from NBC's Meet the Press, and like I said, I took almost the whole interview. I took a huge, I think of like 14 clips from Meet the Press this morning, and I usually take the most clips from Meet the Press, and as I've explained before, the reason for that is because Meet the Press airs first, and like 6 a.m. usually local time here, and so it's the first one I have a chance to watch. I get up bright and early because it takes like 8 or 10 hours to prepare the show. So and if you want to support that, you can become one of my patrons on Patreon. That's just an aside to throw in there, a little plug. But the reason I take some of the clips is because they're good questions by Chuck Todd, but the reason I take other clips is because they're the same question that almost everyone else asked Donald Trump on all the shows, but Chuck Todd asked it first. And this is one of those questions I think just about everyone asked Donald Trump, and I think he was on 4 or 5. He may have done the full Ginsburg, but I think he was on at least 4 of the shows. And this is a question about the illegal labor he supposedly used to tear down some structure before he built Trump Tower, and he gave the same answer everywhere. They say Marco Rubio is a robot because he repeats the same talking points. Having watched it so many times, I kind of memorized it just to prove to you it's going to be something like on the illegals. I didn't hire them. It was a company I hired them. It was 35 years ago. That's the worst labor practice they can find of mine, they have to go back 35 years. I must have really great labor practices. And there's an E-Verify follow-up, which I will talk about after you watch that clip over here.
And a couple other things came up at the debate. A couple other attack TV ads are there. I want to play a clip of one on immigration that's going after you and get you to respond on the other side.
A federal court ruled that Trump's company hired illegal immigrants to help the construction process for Trump Tower. He even paid a $1 million fine. And his new hotel in Washington?
The Washington Post interviewed about 15 laborers at the D.C. hotel site, reporting that many revealed they had entered the U.S. illegally.
Basically, the charge is this, Mr. Trump. You don't practice what you preach on immigration.
Yeah. Well, it's wrong. First of all, the one charge is from 35 years ago. I think that's a pretty good record when people have to go 35 years back to find out about workers. Now, as I remember it, those workers were hired by another company. I just hired a company, and they had some workers that were perhaps from Poland or someplace, And this was the demolition of a building that made way for Trump Tower. So the workers, Chuck, this is 35 years ago you're talking about. By the way, the laws were totally different. The laws were not what they are now, totally different. As far as one of the great hotels in the world that's currently being built on Pennsylvania Avenue between the Capitol building and the White House, there were no illegals. We do checks like you wouldn't believe. And they didn't name any names. They didn't give any information. We are very, very careful. We have an excellent contractor, one of the best in the country, works with me because we build them. I negotiate everything. And that's why that job, by the way, is 2 years ahead of schedule and under budget. And it's going to be one of the great hotels of the world. So it's, you know, I'm doing a good job. They know what they did when they got me, and that's what happened.
Do you believe in
they don't have any proof of any illegals.
Do you believe in E-Verify? Do you believe
said they found a few.
Do you use E-Verify in everything you do when it comes to finding out the immigration status?
I have E-Verify. Yes, I do. And I use E-Verify in that building. And the Washington Post mentioned that they spoke to people. There's no names. I read the story. It was from a few months ago.
Right.
There are no names whatsoever. They have no proof. They have no evidence, no nothing. They saw people, and they were people coming out of the building. And they were absolutely, we go with E-Verify. I am extremely strong on it. Every time I have a contractor meeting on that building, and we're doing fantastically well. You know, we're going to open that building in September, which will be very exciting, just before the election. Perfect. I mean, you know.
The timing.
But I will tell you this. The timing is good, but I am very, very tough on that. And they have absolutely no evidence whatsoever. It's a typical Washington Post story.
All right. You were...
So that's the same answer, basically, that Donald Trump gave on all the shows. In that one, they showed a little clip of the ad. In this next one is on the Trump University issue, which was also asked on several different shows. I actually saw the Fox News Sunday one later where they showed a clip from the ad that included a former Trump University student who says that she was, you know, conned by Donald Trump. America, don't get conned by Donald Trump like I did. And I almost wish I'd taken that clip, but because I saw Meet the Press first and I already got it. They finished. They all signed report cards and 98% said they loved it. And the lawyer came and asked them if they wanted to get their money back. So, of course, they said yes. And it was a great, great school and everybody succeeded. We have many success stories. And, well, you can see the answer, Donald, on basically all the shows about Trump University and the Trump University scandal.
And the Trump I know you had to change the name because it wasn't a university. Why isn't it still
only in New York?
Why isn't
outside of New York?
Why isn't it still a robust business?
Well, because we would open it again. What happened is, first of all, you have to understand, we had about 98% of the people that took the courses approved the courses. They thought it was great. They signed report cards, and they said it was great. Those people are suing now to get their money back because a law firm said, hey, listen, if I could get your money back, what would you say? You would say, oh, great, get my money back. That's great. But they signed these documents saying they rated the course, 98% approval rating and high marks. Number two, we have an A from the Better Business Bureau. And here's the only thing, Chuck. I could settle the case, but I don't want to settle the case. The reason is I don't want to be held up. And once you settle cases, everybody sues you. I don't want to be held up, so I take the case. The one with the Attorney General, that was taken from these people. They made a campaign contribution to the Attorney General of New York. He met with President Obama in Syracuse, New York, and the following day or a day later, he filed a case against me. And that case has been largely won, although they're appealing, but that case has been largely won by me. So it's very easy for me to settle these things, Chuck. I just don't choose to do it. It's not a big deal. It's a civil case. It's not a big deal. But we have, just so you understand, we have a 98% approval rating, and we have an A from the Better Business Bureau.
I guess the question is, did anybody succeed? Did anybody make millions of dollars in real estate using your way? Can you produce folks that have made millions using your way?
People did succeed, and we have those people will be witnesses at the trial. And the man that's doing that, I believe he signed a document saying that he thought Trump University was terrific in some form, and that it was terrific. So we'll have to find out. I haven't seen this commercial, but the man that did that commercial, I think if you tell me his name, or we'll find it, but most of the people signed documents saying it was great. So it'll be interesting. He made the statement. Let's see what he said about the school, because I think he signed a document saying that the school was very good, but we'll find out. I have to do it very quickly.
So that was basically the same bluster that Donald Trump used on all the shows. And I guess one of the side benefits of Donald Trump becoming the Republican nominee, as it seems most likely he's going to be, is that we'll get to hear all the horror stories about Trump University, not to mention the Polish workers who slept on the job site. And that was one thing I didn't get, and that was in another clip, that the Polish workers actually slept on the job site, and Donald Trump was saying, you're not supposed to do that, but it's a very, very common practice. The next clip I'm moving on to is also something that I saw Donald Trump asked about on a couple different shows. Actually, on another show, they had video of Donald Trump saying something kind of racist about the judge in the Trump U case. This is Chuck Todd asking the question, just quoting what Donald Trump said, which isn't as good, but because it was the first show broadcast, it's the clip I took. It's basically the same answer. He kind of says something racist, but then he doesn't. It's like a obfuscation game where you're pretty sure at the end he said something racist or bigoted, or however you want to, since Latinos aren't a race after all. But you kind of get the feeling he said something racist, but if you go through and read the transcript, he didn't. You can't really quite pin it down over in this clip.
Something else about the judge yesterday. You said one of the judges, you said, quote, "I believe he happens to be Spanish, which is fine. He's Hispanic, which is fine. We haven't asked for a recusal, which we may do." Why would you need to ask for a recusal? And what does his ethnicity have to do
with us? I think the judge has been extremely unfair. This is a case that many, many, many people said should have been thrown out on summary judgment. We have 98% approval.
And you think it's because he's Hispanic?
We have an A from the Better Business Bureau. This is a case that should have been, well, because of the wall and because of everything that's going on with Mexico, very unfair lawyers.
And retweet.
Is the last, I thought Chuck, I don't know why he hasn't learned the phrase retweets do not equal endorsements. I see that on so many people's Twitter pages, because both of these are cases where he got in trouble for retweeting something kind of fascist or white supremacist, or the first one is a Mussolini quote, which I will talk about after you see Chuck Todd asked Donald Trump about it over in this clip.
Right now on Twitter, there is a trending retweet of yours. You retweeted somebody from Il Duce 2016. It was a Mussolini quote, but you didn't know it was Mussolini when you retweeted. It said, "It is better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep." That's a famous Mussolini quote. You retweeted it. Do you like the quote? Did you know it was Mussolini?
It's okay to know it's Mussolini. Look, Mussolini was Mussolini. It's okay to. It's a very good quote. It's a very interesting quote, and I know it. I saw it. I saw what, and I know who said it, but what difference does it make whether it's Mussolini or somebody else? It's certainly a very interesting quote.
Well,
that's probably why I have
is a
between
known
Facebook
fascist.
and Twitter 14 million people,
Do you
and
want
other
to be
people don't.
Do you want to be
It's a very
associated?
interesting quote, and people can talk about it.
Do you want to be associated with a fascist?
No, I want to be associated with interesting quotes. And people, I have almost 14 million people between Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all of that. Right. And we do interesting things. And I sent it out. And certainly, hey, it got your attention, didn't it?
Well, and it is trending on Twitter right now, Mr. Trump. I have to leave it there. Stay safe on the trail. We'll see you.
So you can see there that, I guess, the question that Chuck Todd asked you, do you want to be associated with the fascist? I think some people would say that Donald Trump is already kind of himself trending towards fascism. I even made a video at the end of 2015 or beginning of 2016, I can't remember, about the scariest clip of 2015, which I said that some of Trump's supporters reminded me of Hannah Arendt's statement about the banality of evil and the ordinary people who allow evil to triumph. And so I've already passed through Godwin's law myself on the whole Trump thing, but that was Donald Trump. Although he didn't say retweets aren't endorsements, he didn't really disavow the Mussolini quote or being associated with Mussolini. He just said it was an interesting, fascism is interesting. And that wasn't the worst thing. I saw there might have been a stream problem. You can let me know down in the comments section if you're having like buffering problems or you're getting gaps in the clips or what I'm saying. I'm going to move on to the next clip, which is actually from CNN's State of the Union, where Jake Tapper talked to Donald Trump about these white supremacists. I think there's a Twitter aspect to this, and asked, this is about endorsements, where Jake Tapper asked Donald Trump to disavow Donald Trump and the KKK, and he wouldn't do it. He said he didn't know enough about David Duke or the KKK. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, which I will discuss after you watch that clip. Is this Twitter related? Was there the Mussolini quote, contempt? No. This wasn't Twitter. Maybe it wasn't Twitter related, but it's fascist related. That's the connection over in this clip.
The Defamation League, which this week called on you to publicly condemn unequivocally the racism of former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke, who recently said that voting against you at this point would be treason to your heritage. Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, you know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them. And certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
All right. In terms of a potential running mate, sir.
So, like 3 times there, Jake Tapper gave Donald Trump the opportunity to disavow not only David Duke, who he doesn't know enough about, but the KKK, which, I mean, if you're running for president, you should know. Well, you'll see in the next clip I'm going to show, I'm going to agree with S.E. Cupp say some things about what Donald Trump should know when he's running for president. But it actually starts off with Jake Tapper asking an elected official, you know, normally don't show the pundit panels, but this CNN State of the Union pundit panel had Representative Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee. I think she is the only woman in the Republican leadership. And, you know, I talked about Bill Maher's misogyny in that first clip from him I showed about the Republicans going menopausal. Well, maybe this is my own misogyny because there's sort of a misogynistic archetype about, you know, the crazy lady or maybe even the crazy conservative lady. Also, I used to be a public defender, and I saw a lot of women prosecutors who kind of fit this misogynistic archetype. And in the Republican circles, there's been like a series of women. There was Sarah Palin and then Michelle Bachmann, who's now retired from Congress. And I think I've even said on previous live clip roundups that I think that Representative Marsha Blackburn is kind of next in line to be the crazy conservative lady in Congress for the Republicans. Although Sarah Palin, Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee, cannot understand why Donald Trump will not disavow the KKK. And then you'll see Ben Jealous, former leader of the NAACP, and then conservative atheist S.E. Cupp also chime in on the topic. This is also from State of the Union over in this clip.
Just because it happened earlier on the show, I asked Donald Trump 3 times if he would disavow the support of David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan. He did not, and he said he didn't know enough about them. Is that an acceptable answer to you?
To me, that would not be an acceptable answer. I think that should have been an easy answer for him to give, but I'm not somebody that's advising Donald Trump.
You know, that in his debate performance the other night suggests that, you know, there's some chinks in his armor, and one of them is that he's not confident enough to simply say, I disavow the coup.
I was on your other show, The Lead, talking person
about Marco Rubio's eligibility. And she said, well, Donald Trump doesn't know every aspect of the Constitution. This is a man who's running for president. If he doesn't know about the Ku Klux Klan, if he doesn't know about white supremacy and David Duke, if he doesn't know every aspect of the Constitution, ding, 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 that should be kind of a red flag.
And for all the...
So, yeah, I don't often agree with S.E. Cupp, but I actually do agree with what S.E. Cupp said there. And what Ben Jealous from the NAACP said about Donald Trump not having the confidence to disavow the KKK, I mean, I think it has more to do with... I don't think it's some sort of lack of knowledge or ignorance either, which is kind of what S.E. Cupp was saying. So I guess I don't completely agree with S.E. Cupp. But it's not just ignorance. I think there also may be some calculation of getting that segment of the Republican Party that is racist. I guess, what is it, like Bill Maher used to say, like, not all Republicans are racist, but if you're a racist, you're probably a Republican. I don't even think that's probably true, but there are probably a lot of racists who are fringe people who don't support either of the parties, although Donald Trump is trying to appeal to those guys too, I guess, and that's kind of the point of those two clips. I now want to show, before I get back to another Donald Trump clip, I want to show another discussion of Donald Trump this is from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. Bill Maher had on Michael Hayden, who was previously director of the NSA, previously director of the CIA, used to be General Michael Hayden. I think he was an Air Force general. If I didn't look that up, so I could be wrong about that. But he was talking about something that Donald Trump said in the debate about wanting, Bill Maher asked him about, wanting to go beyond waterboarding, and also something he said before the debate in the last several weeks about wanting to go after the families of the terrorists, which is like a war crime. And you'll see Michael Hayden gives an interesting response, and then the next clip will actually be Donald Trump responding to Michael Hayden's response to Donald Trump. But here's first the Michael Hayden response to Donald Trump on Friday's Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO here.
Bill, if we fail in the security function, your liberty's at risk. Because you know what this nation does after catastrophic failure?
Elects Trump?
We things along those lines.
Well, that is what would happen.
No, seriously.
I think the election will hinge on whether there's another terrorist attack in this country. I think if there is, especially close to the election, it is President Trump.
Oh, it is an absolute wild card. Absolutely.
Right.
It is. And recall several years ago, 3 days before the Spanish election, a terrorist attack turned that one upside down.
Of course. And America is known to shit his pants. What do you think about a President Trump or any of these Republicans and some of the stuff they say that strikes me as crazy?
I would be incredibly concerned if a President Trump governed in a way that was consistent with the language that candidate Trump expressed during the campaign.
What language? Like what?
Well, we're going to do waterboarding and a whole lot more because they deserve it. Not be, look, we did
What
tough
about
stuff.
killing the terrorist families?
Oh
my God.
Let me give you a punchline.
I mean, that never even occurred to you, right? I mean,
God, no.
Yeah. And you're a real badass. Okay,
well,
you're a general.
We do what we do.
Yeah, of course.
Let me give you a punchline, all right? If he were to order that once in government, the American Armed Forces would refuse to act.
What? Oh, well, that's quite a statement, sir.
I
thought the whole thing was you have to follow orders.
You cannot. You're not committed. You're not required. In fact, you're required not to follow an unlawful order. That would be in violation of all the international laws of armed conflict.
Wow. So, all right. Well, you've given us a great reason not to support Trump. There would be a coup in this country. Okay.
I know coup, but I'm serious.
No, I think it's a coup that you said it. Good luck with the book. Thank you for...
So, yeah, that was the last question that Bill Maher asked General Michael Hayden, or former General Michael Hayden. And he wasn't talking about a coup. He was talking about how it's not a defense to in a war crimes trial to say you're just following orders. If you're given an order to commit a war crime, you can't commit it. And Bill Maher didn't seem to quite get that. And the other criticism I'd have of Bill Maher's interview of General Michael Hayden, and the last clip I'm going to show is from that same interview. It's on the whole Apple thing. And in that clip, Bill Maher is really hawkish, almost anti-Apple, and attacking, wimpy liberals again. So, well, he doesn't say liberals, but wimpy Apple users, and there's kind of a liberal context there, but subtext there, excuse me. But my other criticism of the interview is that he didn't really ask tough questions. And, for example, in that answer, when Michael Hayden said that U.S. forces would not follow an order to commit war crimes, well, he was there in the Bush administration, the Obama administration. There are a lot of things that are kind of iffy that they did that didn't follow the Geneva Convention, and Bill Maher never asked him about that. And he was specifically talking about Guantanamo and how, we don't have to give them trials because they're POWs, and I'm not showing that clip. But what you forget, I remember all the way back when this whole thing started, that they said they weren't POWs, that they were enemy combatants, and they didn't deserve to get prisoner of war treatment. Well, the thing is, now they're trying to say they're prisoners of. If you're an enemy combatant who's violated the law of war, then you do deserve some kind of trial that shows you violated the law of war, and otherwise you get treated like a POW, which means you can't be interrogated, and you get visits, and it was a long time before the Red Cross got in there, and so the whole thing is bogus. And I don't think Bill Maher was tough enough in that interview, but of course he's not really a journalist, he's a comedian, so you can't really expect him to be as tough as a journalist. And anyway, having shown that clip, I want to show Donald Trump's response to what Michael Hayden said, which is, not very much, but here it is from CBS's Face the Nation. John Dickerson asked Donald Trump about that last clip I showed, and he said this.
The director of the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency said that if you ordered U.S. forces to kill the families of terrorists, which you've suggested, and also to use waterboarding, as you've also suggested, that they would refuse you. What's your response to that?
I don't know what he means by refuse. I can only tell you there's a lot of bad things going on. They're chopping off heads in Syria, and they're chopping off heads all over the Middle East. ISIS is doing a number, and plenty of other beyond ISIS is doing it now. And all I know is that when they start chopping off heads, we have to be very firm. We have to be very, very strong. We have to be very vigilant. And I heard his statement, and I disagree with his statement. We have to be very strong. Can you imagine these people that chop off heads of Christians and plenty of other people, and they do it routinely, and they drown people in big steel metal cages? They drown them. They leave it in for a half hour, and then they pull it up, and everybody's dead. When they hear us talking about waterboarding, give me a break. We have to get a lot tougher if we're going to win this war. If we're not going to be tougher, we're never going to win.
All right, Mr. Trump, thanks for being with us. We'll speak to you again.
So of the many things that Donald Trump either doesn't understand or understands, but for some genius media savvy reason doesn't want to talk about, or pretend he wants to pretend he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the idea of war crimes. Of course, Bill Maher didn't seem to understand it either, that there are things that soldiers can't do even if you order them to do it. But I want to move on to the next few clips of Donald Trump are all from Fox News Sunday. They're not quite in order. I think I took the first clip from the interview about Marco Rubio and put it at the end because I think that's the last Donald Trump clip, and then I'm going to skip over to some other Republicans. I think Marco Rubio's next, then Ted Cruz. And this first clip is a question that Chris Wallace asked that was asked on several programs. For some reason, I took it from Fox News Sunday. I don't think it was asked on Meet the Press. It's about giving out his tax returns, and I don't really understand Donald Trump's answer, even though I heard it on a few different shows, and I will explain why after you watch it from Fox News Sunday this morning over here.
Because both Cruz and Rubio released, they didn't release all of their tax returns, they released part of their tax returns, but you're refusing to release any of your tax returns. Back in 2012, when you were flirting with running for president, you said that releasing your tax returns would be, quote, a great thing to show how successful you are. I know you say you're under audit. You could still release them. The IRS commissioner says you could release them. But let me ask you 3 questions which you can answer without releasing them. Ballpark figure 2014, the returns that you've already filed under penalty of perjury. What was, ballpark, what was your gross income? What was your effective tax rate? And how much did you give to charity?
Okay, Chris, first of all, let me just tell you something. As you know, I have filed in, unbelievable, voluminous documents as to my net worth and as to the company I built, almost 100 pages with the Federal Elections Commission. You know that's been filed, right?
I do know
That's
that.
what you talk about net worth. You don't learn.
You do. I do know that.
I filed with. Yeah, I filed voluminous as to my net worth and as to the values and everything else. And by the way, people in your profession were unbelievably impressed with the company I built. Okay, that has to do with net worth. You can't learn anything from tax returns about net worth or any of that. The tax returns are being audited. I have been audited for many, many years. It is very, very unfair. I don't know why, but for some reason the IRS audits me virtually every year.
But can you tell us what your gross income is?
Very unfair thing.
Can you tell us?
I have been singled out.
Can you tell us what your gross
Chris,
income
I have
is?
been singled out
for 2014. Can you tell us what your effective tax rate is, and can you give us a sense of how much you gave to charity?
Go down. Here's what you do: go down to the Federal Elections Commission and take out my financial disclosure forms. By the way, when you talk about Cruz, he didn't put on that he's borrowing money from banks all over the place, that he borrowed a lot of money from banks at a very low interest rate, an interest rate that you could not get. Believe me, you could never get it. That he borrowed from Goldman Sachs and he borrowed from Citibank. He didn't put that down in his financial disclosure form, and I put down over 100 pages of investments and deals and everything else. I have full disclosure. He didn't disclose. Probably illegally, he didn't disclose that he had $1 million worth of loans at low interest rates. So don't tell me about that. Now, as far as the tax is concerned,
So I don't understand why being audited means that Donald Trump can't release his tax returns. Who is it? I mean, the tax returns are already set. The IRS said that he could release the tax returns, and it's not like the IRS hasn't already seen the tax returns. The only people who haven't seen the tax returns are the people in the public. So I think in one of the answers, was it that one or one of the other ones that I didn't show, Donald Trump said that all these experts have appeared on air and said, he can't release his tax returns. Well, I watch a lot of cable news, and I have not seen anyone explain why Donald Trump can't release his tax returns, and it leaves him open to some charges you'll see Ted Cruz make that are kind of wild and speculative. But before I get to that, I have 2 more Donald Trump clips. The first one is another question from Chris Wallace, a subject I was surprised no other journalists asked about this. On the campaign trail, Donald Trump has started saying that he's going to change the libel laws if he becomes president, where it'll be a lot easier to sue media outlets for false information. And he doesn't really seem to understand the First Amendment. And I'm surprised only Fox News, of all the 5, like I said, he was on 4 or 5 of the 5 morning shows, and Chris Wallace was the only one of the anchors who asked about the libel laws. And here's Donald Trump's answer to that. Let me make sure I get the correct clip here.
New issue on Friday. You want to change libel law.
when they write purposely negative and horrible and false articles, we can sue them and win lots of money. We're going to open up those libel laws.
Is that really the kind of president you will be? If you don't like an article, you're going to sue a newspaper or a network and tie them up in litigation. And by the way, the Supreme Court has ruled on this to open up the libel laws and make it easier to sue us, for instance. You're going to have to amend the Constitution.
Well, in England, I can tell you it's very much different and very much easier. And I think it's very unfair when the New York Times can write a story that they know is false, that they virtually told me they know is false, and I say, why don't you pull the story? And they say, we're not going to do that, because they can't basically be sued, and you can't be sued, because you can say anything you want, and that's not fair. All I want is fairness. So I would absolutely work to open up the libel laws so that if you write something wrong, I want everybody to write whatever they want to write, but if you write something that's wrong, and at least knowingly wrong, but wrong, a person like me and other people can bring lawsuits to have it corrected and to get damages.
Okay, finally, I got about a minute left.
So, yeah, that's Donald Trump's answer that seems to be totally without knowledge of the First Amendment. He says it's better in England because in England they don't have the First Amendment, and here we have the First Amendment that protects the freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and there's a Supreme Court case called New York Times versus Sullivan that says that for a public figure, a news story about a public figure, for a libel case to be proven consistent with the First Amendment freedom of the press, the plaintiff, the person suing, like Donald Trump, has to prove, I guess it's called actual malice, but that's a little bit misleading because it means you have to know you're lying, or you have to have a reckless disregard for the truth, which means that you have to be, no, there's a big risk that what you're saying isn't true. So that's even a looser standard than what Donald Trump was saying. If you go back and watch that clip, he's saying, they know what they're printing is false and we can't sue them. Well, if they know what they're printing is false, and then that fits even the New York Times versus Sullivan standard. But I actually think that there should be a high standard where you have to prove that they know it was false or they recklessly disregarded the truth. And I say that a lot of times to people in the comment section on my Fox News bias videos, where they want the FCC or some other government agency to shut down Fox News for lying and the dishonesty. I've shown a lot of misleading and dishonest things Fox News has done, but I think actually the First Amendment protects Fox News, and I believe in a robust First Amendment protection for the press. So I would never want the government to shut down Fox News. I just want everyone to know that Fox News, I want Fox News to have a reputation for being dishonest and unreliable and biased, and through the efforts of a lot of people, and I guess a small part my effort over the years, I think that Fox News doesn't have a lot of credibility with most of America, though they are the hardcore Fox News supporters. Although one of the interesting things about the Donald Trump campaign, and I'm going to show one more clip of Donald Trump on Fox News in just a second before I get to the other candidates. But one of the interesting things about the Donald Trump campaign is he's attacked Fox News, and Fox News is at like a 3-year low in credibility with its core viewership, or some news story I saw, something like that. And so I guess maybe it's bad news for Fox News also, but I want to show one more clip of the Fox News interview of Donald Trump. This is, like I said, I think this may be from the beginning of the interview. It's earlier than the other clips, and I saved it because it's on the attacks by Marco Rubio, and the next clips I'm going to show are Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, and you'll see Donald Trump basically responds to the attacks from Marco Rubio by attacking Marco Rubio. Big surprise. Over in, let's see, this is clip number 18, is that right? Yeah, here.
Thank you.
Let's get right to it. Marco Rubio says that you are a, quote, con artist. Here he is.
I think it's time to take the mask off of this guy. I mean, he's a guy that portrays himself as a defender of the little guy in this country. He's been exploiting working Americans for 40 years.
Mr. Trump, your response, and what do you think of Marco Rubio?
Well, I think he's a lightweight. He couldn't get elected dog catcher. If he goes back to Florida, he's going to lose big league. He's not liked in Florida. He abandoned Florida. He deceived and defrauded Florida. He said he was going to be a senator, and that's the last thing. He doesn't even show up to meetings. I think he's a guy who thinks he's, I don't think he actually does even think he's hot stuff, because he's not hot stuff. But he is, I call him Little Marco. That's what he is. He's Little Marco. But, you know, he's a very nasty guy. So is Ted Cruz, by the way. They're nasty. And, you know, they teamed up. I saw them shaking hands before the thing. Let's go. Let's see if we can get them. Because they're establishment guys, no matter how you cut it. They're establishment guys. And as far as, you know, the con man, it was very insulting because you know my career. I built an unbelievable company. And, by the way, I filed with the FCC almost the federal elections, almost 100 pages of financials that show a worth of, if I ever sold it, over $10 billion. That's what I built. I had #1 bestsellers, including The Art of the Deal, which is one of the #1, probably the #1 best-selling business book of all time. The Apprentice was one of the top shows on television, one of the top shows.
Trump?
I mean, when you think of that as being a con man, I don't think so.
I stipulate that you've been a very successful...
You talk about a con man, I think he's a con man.
I stipulate that you've been a very successful businessman, but let's go through some of the...
So that's the last Donald Trump clip for those of you who are sick of Donald Trump. Why I'm showing so many Donald Trump clips compared to Cruz and Rubio is basically Donald Trump is on the trajectory to be the Republican nominee. There was this pretty good segment over on NBC's Meet the Press. Since I took 14 clips from Meet the Press, I didn't take it. But there's a link down in the video description where you can go to the full episode of Meet the Press from today, and I recommend that you watch those shows if you really want more context from the corporate media yourself. And in this one segment that I'm not showing, they talked about the various pathways of the Republican candidates to win the nomination, and only Donald Trump had a pathway where he actually gets the most delegates and wins on the first ballot. Both Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, their only pathway right now basically is to win their home state, which Ted Cruz looks like he may do, and Marco Rubio is still losing Florida, and then win a smattering of other states, and the proportion, a lot of them aren't winner take all. Florida and Texas are winner take all, and then get to the convention and stop Donald Trump from getting a majority, and go to a brokered convention and win, on one of the later ballots. They have no pathway, basically, unless, all the polls are way, way wrong, like the 5 or 10 day weather forecast says it's going to be sunny and hot and like a snowstorm blows through, or that kind of low probability outcome. It's not impossible, but I'm not going to be getting my skis out or whatever. I don't know how to put it exactly, but I don't think Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz have much of a chance of being the nominee, and if they do, it will be at a brokered convention unless all the polls change. And the first clip I want to show is a Senator Marco Rubio clip over on Fox News Sunday. Basically, it's the flip side of this last clip that I showed of Donald Trump. It's Marco Rubio. This is why'd you wait? To some extent, decided to finally go negative on Donald Trump, and you can see how Marco Rubio responds to that over here.
This week, Donald Trump, a choke artist, and he was just returning fire after Rubio attacks again. Spoke with Rubio Saturday in Birmingham, Alabama, to discuss his new strategy. Senator Rubio, I want to start with a question that a lot of political insiders are asking. Why did you wait so long to go after Donald Trump? I got to assume that all of this stuff was in your Oppo research files for months. Wasn't it a big miscalculation to wait until he got into such a strong position?
No, that's a legitimate and important question. And a couple points. One is we were being attacked by a bunch of other people during this race, so we were responding to that. And the other is I really believed that voters would see through this con job that he's trying to do, and obviously that hasn't happened. He's convinced a lot of people, and now's the time where we have to address it. I believe a first-rate con artist is on the verge of taking over the party of Lincoln and Reagan, and now or never we need to remind people of what's at stake here. We're about to lose the conservative movement to someone who's not a conservative, and the party of Lincoln and Reagan to a con artist.
At a rally this
and Marco Rubio said that on a couple shows. I didn't take clips from all the shows they were on. Before I was explaining why I took so many more clips of Donald Trump, because I think he's probably going to be the nominee. The thing I like about that clip so much is, and I think I saw Marco Rubio say the same thing on a couple different shows, is his talking point is as to why he waited so long is because, I didn't think Donald Trump was really going to con so many people. And it kind of reminds me of the first clip I showed of Bill Maher at the beginning when he was talking about the Republican debate, the OMG debate, and before he got to the menopausal comment, in the middle there he said something like, for those of you who have criticized me for talking about the stupidity of the American people, I accept your apology, right? That wasn't that at the beginning. Well, that's kind of the same thing Marco Rubio said right there about, at least the same subject, where he was basically saying, I didn't realize the American people were going to be so stupid when it came to Donald Trump. I don't know, is that what he said? I think I heard him say it a few times on a few different shows, and he didn't say it exactly that way, but that's basically what he was saying. And I want to show one more clip of Marco Rubio before I get on to a few clips from Ted Cruz, and then get on to the Democratic side of the race, including several clips of Senator Bernie Sanders. Way back, like 20 minutes ago, I saw someone down in the live comments asking me about whether they were too late to see me talk about Bernie Sanders. No, I saved the Bernie Sanders clips for almost the end of the show, so you haven't missed that. This next clip of Marco Rubio is kind of about whether he's going to support Donald Trump if he's the nominee, and he won't say that he will, because he won't say that Donald Trump will never be the nominee, which is what this question is about. There's this Never Trump hashtag that Marco Rubio has been supporting, and some people have seen it as him saying he won't support Trump if he is the nominee, which would break his pledge of supporting the Republican nominee. And here's Marco Rubio dealing with that question. It's the final Marco Rubio clip of the night. Over here.
All the things you've now said about Donald Trump, you said he's running a big scam, it's a con job. So how can you possibly still then retain the position that if he's the nominee, you'll support him?
Because he's never going to be the nominee. So I'm not worried about a hypothetical that's never going to happen. Donald Trump will never have 1,236 delegates, which is what he needs to be there. I can get those delegates, and we're going to continue to work to make all of these things live against here, and what he's trying to do. I think you're going to see a sea shift here pretty quickly.
What's confusing about that, though, is you say if he were the nominee, it would destroy the conservative movement. You're painting scary pictures of him being the nominee, but then you're saying he'll never be the nominee. You signed on to the hashtag Never Trump. I guess what people wonder is you say all these terrible things about him, but then why might you not, like Chris Christie, who said bad things about him, just turn around and endorse him once he gets the nomination?
Well, he's not going to be the nominee because we are not going to allow, people will wake up and we're not going to allow a con artist to take over the party of Lincoln and Reagan. I mean, he is pulling off a world-class scam here. I mean, he's telling people he's all these things that he's never been his entire life. He says he's fighting for the little guy, the working class. He has spent his entire business career sticking it to working people.
Let me ask
when his projects go under, the first people that don't get paid are the contractors some of whom have gone bankrupt. They're calling me. I mean, I'm getting nonstop emails and calls now from people that have been scammed by Donald Trump, and their stories are heartbreaking.
Let me ask you this, Senator. You say you're going to stop him. Are you going to have to win? Are you going to win Florida? He says he's going to beat you there.
Absolutely. No, we're going to win Florida. Florida's not going to vote for a con artist like Donald Trump. Just things he says and so forth. That's going to end here. The Republican Party.
It's taking it. In that case, you'd be basically taking the nomination away from Donald Trump. Wouldn't that just cause an uproar from all those people who voted for him, who've given him their support? Wouldn't that just create calamity in the party?
Well, my preference is that we beat him outright in the primary process, and I believe that's exactly what's going to happen here in the next few weeks, especially as we move to winner-take-all states. The terrain begins to change, and I feel very good about it. I don't think it's going to get to that. But let me just say, the rules are what they are in the Republican Party. You have to have X number of delegates in order to be the nominee, and if you don't have it would be the end of the Republican Party. It will split us and splinter us in a way that we may never be able to recover, and the Democrats will be joyful about it. It's not going to happen.
We're going to have to end it there. Senator.
So, like I said, that's the second of the Senator Marco Rubio clips, and like I said, I don't think he's top three. I was from him. I do have 3 Ted Cruz clips coming up. 2 are from Meet the Press, and 1 is from Face the Nation. First, the Meet the Press clip. The first Meet the Press clip is a question I saw Ted Cruz answer a couple different places about how it is that that Donald Trump has stolen his outsider status. He was supposed to be the outsider, and he was supposed to be the evangelical and the conservative. And I saw this question asked a couple different ways. I actually saw it asked better using polls in a later program, but since Meet the Press was first, I used Chuck Todd asking the question to Ted Cruz. And, you know, Marco Rubio gets this bad rap as the robot, I guess, and he has some robotic tendencies, but Ted Cruz, of all the candidates, having watched them over and over again on these Sunday shows, he's the one who like goes back to the talking points the most, and I think he really goes back to the talking points, answering this question about whether he has had his outsider status stolen. And Chuck Todd asked him using a quote from Rush Limbaugh. That's what I was looking down at my notes, and I also want to make sure I get the correct clip. It's number 21. Over here.
He said, Ted Cruz has fought these guys, and for he was almost lamenting it, outsider brand. Super Tuesday was supposed to be the day you were going to be solidifying your status as the front runner, and it's not turning out that way. How did Trump steal your outsider brand?
Well, listen, I think Super Tuesday will continue to narrow the field. The first 4 states narrowed the field down from 17 candidates to a much smaller field. I think Super Tuesday, we will effectively have 2 candidates coming out of it that have a viable path, that have enough delegates to have a shot at winning. And head-to-head with Donald Trump, I beat Donald by 16 points, 56-40. And, you know, we really saw this on the debate last week. We saw a contrast between Washington deal makers. And this is how we've gotten in the mess we're in now, is Republicans who cut deals with Democrats, grow the debt, grow government, and give away our constitutional rights. A contrast between deal makers and a principled constitutional conservative. You know, Chuck, it was striking when Donald Trump said, Ted, you got to be willing to compromise on the Supreme Court. You got to be willing to compromise on religious liberty. Let me tell you, I will not compromise away your religious liberty rights. I will not compromise away your Second Amendment. And Donald Trump is telling us, if he's president, he'll cut a deal with Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer and give away your constitutional rights. That's how we got in this mess.
Let me end where we...
So, yeah, that was Ted Cruz saying the same talking points I saw him say on almost every show he was on, and it gets kind of repetitive, and I don't think it's really persuasive. I said in my debate clip roundup from last Thursday night's debate that I thought that Marco Rubio actually did a better job of attacking Donald Trump than Ted Cruz did, but it may have to do with my bias, just that I have this sort of like almost physical negative reaction to Ted Cruz. He just strikes me as like such a weasel. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like I like Marco Rubio so much, but at least he has some weird quirks, but he doesn't strike me as like such a total weasel. I don't know. Maybe it's one of my implicit biases. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I'm gonna move on to the next Ted Cruz clip from the Meet the Press interview. He said something similar on a couple different programs when he was talking about what might be in Donald Trump's tax returns that he hasn't released. This was also, I remember he said something similar on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, but this is the one, I'm glad I got the Meet the Press clip, because this is the one where he actually says who the mobster is he thinks Donald Trump may have ties to, and I'll say something related to The Simpsons about that particular mobster after I show you that clip from Meet the Press this morning based on this question from Chuck Todd in clip number 22 here.
Summary pages of your tax returns. So did Marco Rubio. And you said the only reason you released summary pages is because Marco Rubio released summary pages. Why should Donald Trump... How are you forcing Donald Trump to release his tax return if you're only releasing the first 2 pages?
Well, listen, I've released 9 years of tax returns. And by the way, the first 5 years have everything. The last 4 have summary pages. I've got 9 years of tax returns. Donald Trump has not released so much as a paperclip. And Donald needs to release his taxes. You know, Mitt Romney this week.
So will you be happy if he just does summary pages? Will you be happy if he just does summary pages?
Look, it would be a very positive step in the right direction. I would be thrilled if he releases the whole thing. I'm happy to release everything. I've released, for 5 years, I've released everything. We just matched what the opponents did for the last 4 years. But the critical point, Chuck, as Mitt Romney observed, the fact that Donald seems terrified to release his taxes suggests that there's a bombshell there. And it's natural to wonder, well, what is it that he's hiding in his taxes? Maybe it's that Donald Trump doesn't earn nearly as much as he has so loudly told everyone. Maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Who knows? Maybe it's the case that Mitt Romney is richer than Donald Trump. He could answer that by releasing his taxes. On the other hand, maybe it's the case that he has given large sums of money to left-wing groups like Planned Parenthood. You know, he praises Planned Parenthood in the debates over and over again. Maybe he's been a big financial supporter of that. All of those questions Donald can put to rest. Or, you know, Chuck, maybe it is the case that Donald, there have been multiple media reports about Donald's business dealings with the mob, with the mafia. Maybe his taxes show those business dealings are a lot more extensive than has been reported, regardless of what the bombshell
Wait a minute, Senator
is.
Cruz, let me stop you there. That's openly speculative. Do you have any facts to support that Donald Trump has mob ties?
ABC, CNN, multiple news reports have reported about his business dealings with, for example, S&A Construction, which was owned by Fat Tony Salerno, who is a mobster who is in jail. It is owned by 2 of the major New York crime families. And that has been reported in multiple media outlets. You know, you're going to have Donald on the show later today. You ought to ask him, Donald, have you written a check to Planned Parenthood? If so, how much and when? I mean, that's a question that Donald ought to answer. We don't know what it is that he's hiding in those tax returns, but I can promise you this. If he's the nominee come September, October, every day on the news will be about those tax returns, about whatever the bombshell is, and Republican primary voters deserve to know before the nomination, not after, because you better believe Hillary Clinton and the media are going to go to town on it, and the primary voters should be able to vet all of us.
Let me ask you something Rush Limbaugh said.
And you see he's going into that Rush Limbaugh thing that I already showed. I guess I showed them out of order, but I wanted to show that clip. I thought it was interesting that the way that Ted Cruz there mentioned not only the mob ties, like I said he did in this ABC's This Week interview, but he also said the name of the mobster who he thinks that Donald Trump had ties with, Fat Tony Salerno. And I remember there was like a Fat Tony in The Simpsons, and I looked it up. I saw on a Simpsons wiki, first, one of the things that contradicted that Ted Cruz, he said that Fat Tony Salerno was in prison. According to Simpsons wiki, Fat Tony Salerno actually died in a hospital in Springfield, Missouri. Ooh. And he was part of the inspiration for Fat Tony D'Amico, who's like this mobster parody in The Simpsons. And one of the weird tie-ins on that is if you Google Ted Cruz Simpsons, you'll find this BuzzFeed video from a few months back. And with all my fair use copyright problems, the last thing I'm going to do is take a BuzzFeed video for my Sunday clip roundup. But if you just Google Simpsons Ted Cruz, you'll find that Ted Cruz actually does his own impressions of several Simpsons characters. So, although not Fat Tony Salerno or Fat Tony D'Amico, but you would think that Ted Cruz actually knows there is a Fat Tony. So I wonder if when he said Fat Tony in that answer, he was thinking of The Simpsons. I was thinking of The Simpsons. You can let me know down in the comment section if you were thinking of The Simpsons. And I want to show one more Ted Cruz clip. This is from CBS's Face the Nation, where John Dickerson asked Ted Cruz how he can say that he likes Donald Trump after all the nastiness. And I think this may be an explanation for why Ted Cruz's attacks haven't landed quite as hard as Marco Rubio's, because Marco Rubio is like going for the gut, or going for the real he's going for the kill, I guess, on Donald Trump, saying he's a charlatan and a con man. And here you'll see Ted Cruz saying more that he's an entertainer. He talks about acrobats and dancing bears and the circus. which I think is kind of an interesting metaphor. And in a way, it makes me think that Ted Cruz sees himself almost as at least part politician and part entertainer in the way he's talking about Donald Trump over in this clip.
It's pretty bracing things about you, and you say you still like him, and you say, how can that be the case?
Oh, listen, Donald is a charming person. I mean, he can be fun. He can make you laugh.
Charming things about you.
But he can turn on you. I mean, just overnight, he can turn on you and get nasty and personal and vicious. But listen, I treat him as an entertainer. I laugh it off. I mean, it's like going to the circus and seeing the acrobats and the dancing bears. You know, he's willing to say things that are patently false. So, for example, at the debate this week, he backed off of his health care position for 20 years. For 20 years, he has agreed with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on socialized medicine, saying Obamacare doesn't go far enough. He wants the government to pay for everyone's health care and to control it. And, you know, he and I had a back and forth where I asked him, is it true or false that he said the government should pay for everyone's health care? He said it's false. Listen, within minutes, we put out a video just contrasting what he said there with video of him just a few months earlier saying exactly the opposite. And what I think the debate this week did is gave real clarity to the voters that to beat Hillary, we need a consistent conservative, someone who has stood for free market principles, who has stood for the Constitution, and critically, who stood for the working men and women of this country. You know, you look at, you know, we talked a lot about Donald's record on immigration. I mean, there's irony that he's made the center of his entire campaign immigration, given that he faced a $1 million court judgment for being part of a conspiracy to hire illegal aliens, given that just this week news broke that he is hiring foreign workers at his fancy hotel in Florida. And he claims, you know, he did an interview after the debate where he said, well, gosh, you can't find Americans to do these jobs, to be waiters or waitresses or bellhops. I mean, John, what ridiculous nonsense. You know, the New York Times reported roughly 300 Americans applied for those jobs. He only hired 17. Instead, he brought in foreign workers because they're captive workers, because you can pay them less because they can't leave. And I think the working men and women are getting hammered right now. They want someone they can trust to stand with them. And part of the reason so many conservatives are uniting behind our campaign is I'm the only one who led the battle against amnesty, has led the battle to secure the borders, has led the battle for the working men and women of this country.
Let me ask you a question about the borders and the...
So that's Ted Cruz explaining why he doesn't take any of the attacks from Donald Trump personally. He's an entertainer. Like I said, I like that circus metaphor he used, and then he does a good pivot there into all of his attacks on Donald Trump. And I realized I didn't take the Donald Trump clip where he talked about his whatever the project was in Florida, where he didn't hire U.S. workers to be waiters and waitresses or some other kind of like serving people. And I saw Donald Trump say a couple different places that the reason he didn't do that was because they couldn't get qualified Americans who'd only work 4 months in the hot season in Florida, or he had some explanation, and for some reason I didn't take that clip. I'm sorry, I spared you another Donald Trump clip, but that was actually the last clip of all the top, you know, the entire Republican side of the nomination for president in 2016. That topic, that was the last clip of the night. It only took, what, like 90 minutes to get through all that, and now I have about a dozen clips on the Democratic side before I get to that last clip of Bill Maher and General Michael Hayden talking about the FBI and Apple arguing over whether they're going to open up that iPhone, create a backdoor to open the iPhone of the San Bernardino terrorist. But that'll be at the end. Before I get to that, I have a dozen clips on the Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders contest, and last night was Saturday night, and that was Saturday was the South Carolina primary, where Hillary Clinton did really, really well, as reported over on Fox News Sunday. Their reporter Ed Henry, you know, usually I criticize them for bias. This week I'm going to show Ed Henry's report, which is a little under 2 minutes, and I actually think it's a a fairly balanced report, fair and balanced. I wouldn't say it's fair and balanced, but fairly balanced. And, you know, it talks about how big Hillary Clinton's victory was, but that's pretty much all in South Carolina. I can't remember. I think she won by like 50 or 60 points and got 85% of the African-American vote. So it was a big win in the South Carolina primary. Doesn't look good for Bernie, and that's kind of what Ed Henry is saying on Fox News Sunday this morning over in this clip.
A big victory last night in South Carolina, building on our momentum going into Super Tuesday. Fox News Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry is on the trail in Columbia, South Carolina. Ed.
Chris, first Nevada, now South Carolina. Hillary Clinton is in the driver's seat heading into Super Tuesday. Her campaign heating up just as about 1,800 delegates will be handed out in the first 2 weeks of March, about 900 of them next Tuesday alone. That's why Bernie Sanders fled here yesterday, went to the Super Tuesday states of Texas and Minnesota, as Hillary Clinton stayed here to declare that this race is about to go national, and she tried out a new line attacking not Sanders, but Donald Trump. Listen.
Despite what you hear, we don't need to make America great again. America has never stopped being great. We do need to make America whole again. Instead of building walls, we need to be tearing down barriers.
A revolution is more than waving a sign. With your help, we can take a giant step forward in moving this political revolution. If we win here in Texas.
Now, the Sanders plan is to try and win in Super Tuesday states like Oklahoma and Colorado, then scoop up a smaller number of delegates, because remember, on the Democratic side, these states are not winner-take-all, they're proportional. Then they're going to attack Clinton's pro-trade policies in places like Michigan votes on March 8th. You have about 150 delegates there. Ohio on March 15th, about 150 delegates there as well. Clinton, though, could counter, of course, with Florida. That's got 246 delegates. And remember, Clinton has a big edge with super delegates, those party bosses. All of that adds up to the fact that she may be on the verge of taking command here, Chris.
Ed, thank you. And it's time now.
Well, I guess it did say party bosses there at the end about the super delegates, but that's not quite true. It's the elected representatives are the super delegates. They're sort of like they're one step removed from being directly elected in the primaries, but they're usually elected representatives in some other way, like members of Congress, and there are some other like party delegates who are also elected. I actually have been involved in my local Democratic Party, not so much the last few years, but some years before that. I watched who my local delegates were, and I even in 2008 I tried to be a delegate to the Democratic Convention for Obama because I had supported Obama really early on. So I don't know if party bosses is really accurate, but otherwise I thought that was a fairly balanced report. And I don't did they mention the FBI investigation? I watched that clip a couple times, and I don't remember any mention of the FBI investigation against Hillary Clinton. And I thought that was like required in every story about the Democratic race. I think I said that last week or the week before, but it wasn't there, so I guess I was wrong unless I missed it. You can let me know what you think, or if I missed it down in the comment section. This is the last Fox News clip on the Democratic side of the race, because Bernie Sanders didn't go on Fox News Sunday and Hillary Clinton didn't go on any of the networks. But I have one more clip of Chris Wallace over on Fox News Sunday talking about the possibility that Hillary Clinton, who has never gone on Fox News Sunday since she announced for president, may actually go on to do an interview next month, as you can hear Chris Wallace explain over here.
We'll keep you up to date on our continuing effort to get Hillary Clinton to answer questions for the millions of you who watch this program. You may remember last week we said we'd reached out to 2 Clinton campaign officials who didn't even answer it. We'll let you know. A final word.
Maybe she thinks she's going to have the nomination wrapped up by next month. That actually, I don't know if that's possible. Go all the way to the convention, and if nothing else, he'll fight for his message. But it's looking less and less like he has a chance to be the nominee with what happened in South Carolina and the polls in some of the upcoming states. And that's the next clip I want to show is from CBS's Face the Nation, their Battleground Tracker poll, talking about the Democratic side of the race over in this clip.
Democratic nomination. Last night, Hillary Clinton had a big win in South Carolina. She won a whopping 73% of the vote compared to 26% for Bernie Sanders. And in the Democratic race in our Super Tuesday Battleground Tracker, Hillary Clinton is up over Bernie Sanders by 20 points in Virginia. She leads 59-39. In Texas, Clinton has 61% support from Democratic primary voters. Sanders has 37%. And finally, in Georgia, she is at 63% compared to Bernie Sanders at 35%. And we'll be back in a moment with Bernie.
So I'm going to get to the Bernie Sanders interview clips in just a minute, but first I want to show a kind of similar poll over on NBC's Meet the Press. Like I said when I was talking about the Republicans, these polls are kind of like the 5, 10, or even further in the future weather forecasts, where they give you some information that is kind of useful, but it's not something you can really rely on, and sometimes something really did happens, and be prepared for that. But here's the NBC numbers that also show that Bernie Sanders is not really he really doesn't have much of a path to the nomination over here.
Less than a blowout win last night in South Carolina. Clinton beat Bernie Sanders 74-26, 3-1 margin. She swept virtually every category in the exit poll, especially African Americans, whom she won by a margin of 6-1, and she also won every single county in the state.
Despite what you hear, we don't need to make America great again. America has never stopped being great. But we do need to make America whole again.
Yeah, look who's pivoting to the general. Clinton's huge victory is a prelude to Super Tuesday, when voters in 12 states go to the polls in the biggest single day of the primary season for both parties. And our brand new NBC News Wall Street Journal Marist polls in 3 key Super Tuesday states have even more good news for Hillary Clinton. Our poll shows big leads for Clinton in Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas. Look at that, sitting around the 60% mark in all 3. Pretty good indication that Clinton is set to have a Super Tuesday. But let's turn.
So before I get to the actual interview clips of Bernie Sanders, including the interview that Chuck Todd did, I want to do a couple more Meet the Press clips. The first one is actually breaking news on Meet the Press this morning. This is, the bad news for Bernie Sanders. I guess this is kind of good news for Bernie Sanders, although it's more like bad news for the Democratic Party, and it has to do with Gabbard. A couple months back, I had a clip of her with her fight with Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's the head of the Democratic National Committee, basically the Democratic Party national headquarters, and they were arguing over whether they were biasing the debate schedule to Tulsi Gabbard. Explaining her big news and her reasoning behind it is also interesting, as I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman from Hawaii, Democratic National Committee Vice Chair, has been at odds with her boss, DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, for months over the Democratic presidential debate schedule. Congresswoman, you're here because you have an announcement to make regarding your position at the DNC. Tell us.
Well, first of all, I am resigning from the DNC so that I can support Bernie Sanders for president. I'd like to tell you why. As a veteran and as a soldier, I've seen firsthand the true cost of war. I served in a medical unit during my first deployment, where every single day I saw the human cost of home are still struggling to get out of a black hole. I think it's most important for us as we look at our choices as to who our next commander-in-chief will be, is to recognize the necessity to have a commander-in-chief who has foresight, who exercises good judgment, who looks beyond the consequences, who looks at the consequences of the actions that they are looking to take before they take those actions, so that we don't continue to find ourselves in these failures that have resulted in chaos in the Middle East and so much loss of life.
But it was just a month ago, and this was sort of got us curious about. A month ago, you said you think the next commander-in-chief needs to have a, quote, military mindset. You said this during an interview on Fox News. Does Senator Sanders have a military mindset?
From what I've seen, from talking with him and from his record, he does. And what that military mindset means is you go through an analysis process as you're looking at potential courses of action that you're going to take and how and when we use our military power. And just as importantly, when we don't use that military power, that military mindset says you have foresight. You look at what are the results, what are the consequences of these actions, how will other actors in the area react to those actions, what will we then do? And you look, continue down the eventually getting yourself into before you make that decision that ends up costing us lives and treasure.
All right, I want to bring in the rest of the panel here.
And I think that last point that Representative Tulsi Gabbard made is a really important point, that a military mindset doesn't mean hawkish on military intervention. In fact, a lot of people who've been in the military, who've seen combat, are the people who are most reticent to get involved in combat. And this, I personally learned this at a very young age. I didn't have time to put it in the video description. If you're watching this as a recorded show, I'll try to put an annotation up here somewhere or a link down in the video description about a video I made a really long time ago, like 2006 or 2007, called Can You Support Peace and Support Our Troops, about some of my early experiences that made me really pro-peace. What Tulsi Gabbard said there is really important, but she's actually someone who I thought was more hawkish. I think I showed a clip of her like a year or so back where she was complaining that President Obama was not hawkish enough on sending ground troops or sending the military into Syria. And so I'm kind of surprised to hear her say what she said, and I wonder if it has more to do with her fight with Debbie Wasserman Schultz than her actually becoming more dovish. But it would be nice if that were true, and you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. Before I get to some actual clips of Bernie Sanders, I have one more Meet the Press clip. This is kind of a teaser for Bernie Sanders. When I watched this at like 6 or 7 this morning, I actually thought this was kind of biased against Bernie Sanders because it really then the more and more I've seen the polls and thought about it, over pessimistic, actually it may be more realistic than biased, even though I've been kind of leaning towards Bernie Sanders. I'm based on what happened in South Carolina and the polls that I already showed you. I'm getting kind of pessimistic about his chances. And that's also the tone you can see from Chuck Todd this morning in the teaser for his Bernie Sanders interview over here.
We got a lot more to talk about on this, I promise. But in a moment, I'm going to catch up with Senator Bernie Sanders. Does he have a path left to the nomination after getting shellacked in South Carolina?
I thought that was a little biased because up until South Carolina, if you didn't count the superdelegates, the elected officials who can change their mind up until the last minute, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were actually tied in delegates, but I don't remember Meet the Press ever showing that. I guess the intro about the getting shellacked, that wasn't that biased. It kind of matched up what they said on all the other shows, and he did lose by like, what, 50 or 60 points. And then this next clip finally is a clip of Bernie Sanders answering a question from Chuck Todd about his big loss. And, you know, Bernie Sanders actually has some talking points. I heard him say the same basic answer on 2 or 3 different shows. On at least 2 of them, he used the word decimated. And you can hear him use the word decimated in his answer to Chuck Todd about why he lost South Carolina after saying a couple weeks ago he might actually win it. And that he was winning with blacks over here.
Next Saturday for my next guest, Bernie Sanders, with Hillary Clinton enjoying a big victory in the South Carolina primary. That makes Super Tuesday even more crucial if he's going to keep his hopes alive for securing the Democratic nomination. Senator Sanders, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
My pleasure.
Senator, you said, I think we're picking up more and more African-American support. Frankly, I think we can win there, referring to... Senator, what happened?
Well, we got decimated, African Americans. It was pathetic from our perspective. But by the way, what was the glimmer of positive news for us is that we won the 29 years of age or younger vote, and we did well with African American young people as well as white young people. But no question, Secretary Clinton won that state, and she won it big. But I'm in Minnesota now. I think we got a real shot at Minnesota. I think we got a shot at Colorado, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, and Vermont. So we're looking to the future, not looking back. We had 2 rallies yesterday in Texas, 10,000 people out in Austin, 8,000 people out in Dallas. I think the future for us, it's going to be a tough fight. I think we can pull it off, Chuck.
Look, the game is delegates.
So that was Bernie Sanders' answer about South Carolina. He was honest about losing. And then I kind of cut off the beginning of the next question there where Chuck Todd asked him, you know, you're targeting some states, but you're targeting the states that don't have as many delegates, and you need so many delegates to win. And you'll see Bernie Sanders' answer, which I will discuss after you watch that Meet the Press clip from this morning over here.
Delegates now. It's not where you win states. It's about accumulating delegates. Your campaign is targeting states that are worth 288 delegates on Super Tuesday. Secretary Clinton is targeting 6 states that are worth 571. If you both do well in the states you're targeting, she's going to have at least a 200 delegate lead at that point. As much as that, why aren't you trying to win more delegates?
Well, we are trying to win every delegate that we can. And not only are we fighting for Super Tuesday, we're looking ahead to California, the largest state of all, New York State. We think we're going to do well in Michigan. Look, Chuck, we began this campaign 9.5 months ago at 3% in the polls. 3%, 70 points behind Hillary Clinton for the message of inequality, broken system, enormous momentum. It is a tough fight. We knew that from the beginning. But I think we're going to do well on Super Tuesday. We're going to do well in many states after that, and we look forward to those state-by-state struggles.
You know, there was a long story.
So that was Bernie Sanders' answer. I heard him talk about similar states and several answers, talking about New York, Michigan, and California. You know, I'm in California. I remember several months back, one of my nieces asked me if I was going to vote for Bernie Sanders, and I said, well, I think he has to win Iowa and New Hampshire if he even wants to, or if he even has a chance, and I think it's most likely that the race will be over before it gets to California on June 7th, and so I won't actually have to decide. I'll just vote for Hillary Clinton. But Bernie Sanders says he's going to be here in California, so maybe I will have to decide who to vote for in the Democratic primary. You can let me know what you think who I should vote for. This Bernie Sanders clip. This was Todd's Meet the Press. Let me make sure I have this right here. Right, this is the last Chuck Todd Meet the Press clip, and it's on the question of the crime bill. You know, that's become a hot topic, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm going to show a Bill Maher clip talking about that, and just will actually be the following clip. But first, here's Bernie Sanders responding to a question from Chuck Todd about why he voted for the 1994 crime bill that a lot of people say is responsible for mass incarceration. And if you read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander that I have right here, you'll see her talk about how the Clinton administration and that crime bill really stepped up mass incarceration and is responsible for a lot of the problems in black communities. Well, here's Chuck Todd asking Bernie Sanders about it because he actually voted for it, and he has a couple different reasons why he voted for the bill, and Chuck Todd questions one of them, and Bernie Sanders definitely does not agree with Chuck Todd's questioning of that reasoning, which you will see for yourself. Make sure I get the right clip here. Number 32. For you to see here.
This week, as the back and forth on the crime bill had gone, you had said you supported the House version of the crime bill because it had an assault weapons ban in it, but that turned out not to be the case. So why did you put out a statement that was misleading on that front?
Whoa. No, that's not my understanding.
It was not in the House bill that you voted. It was in a Senate bill, but it was not in that House bill.
That's for my knowledge. Hold it. To the best of my knowledge, there were two important provisions, and that is a Violence Against Women Act, which was very important. I've worked very hard to prevent domestic violence, and my understanding is there is a ban on assault weapons in that bill. Look, I spoke on the floor of the House about the harmful impacts of that bill, but weighing the pros and the cons, I voted for it. And by the way, I also voted against the so-called Welfare Reform Act that Secretary Clinton then supported, which has had a horrible impact on the poorest of the poor people in this country.
All right, Senator Sanders, I have to leave it there. I know you have another interview coming up.
So that's Senator Bernie Sanders trying to differentiate himself from Hillary Clinton on some of the issues that are really important to the Black Lives Matter movement, which brings me to this clip from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, where he talks about a Black Lives Matter activist who interrupted Hillary Clinton earlier in the week. I'm not going to actually show you a clip of that video, although if you go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/LiberalViewer, it's like the second or third to last post I put up was a link to this video, which is on YouTube, of the Black Lives Matter activist interrupting Hillary Clinton, asking her to apologize for mass incarceration for reasons you can read about here, although it's more about her husband really than her, but specifically talking about some quotes of hers about bringing these people to heel, or I don't remember the exact quote, and also referring to these young urban criminals as super predators. And she, in the video, she doesn't apologize, but later she did issue a statement where she apologized for the comments that she made back in the 1990s and said she wouldn't use that language again. So, and that comes up in this discussion. It's Bill Maher taking the wrong side on this issue, of course, against Black Lives Matter, because they're focused on the racism, and he Michael Eric Dyson on, who I disagree with a lot, but I think I agree with kind of here. And then Mark Ruffalo, actor Mark Ruffalo, says something kind of interesting. And then this woman, Joanna, I can't remember her name, who's the editor of Cosmo, says something I may also want to criticize after you watch this entire back and forth or going around the panel on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher for about a little under 5 minutes, which I will discuss for fair use comment, media analysis, political commentary, and media analysis. I'm actually personally involved in Black Lives Matter Sacramento here, helping with a little bit of a legal question answering, which I may talk about also as part of my fair use commentary after you watch that HBO Real Time with Bill Maher clip over here.
As we all know, racism's epicenter is the Oscars and Hillary Clinton. Oh, wait, that's crazy. Wait a sec.
Clearly.
Okay, but...
Well, they got part of it right. She is white.
Right. It is a little crazy that the protests I see have to do with the Oscars and with Hillary Clinton. A Black Lives Matter protester interrupted Hillary at a fundraiser and said, Hillary Clinton, can you apologize to black people for mass incarceration? You know, of the 1,000 things I could complain about with Hillary Clinton, being a racist really doesn't rise to the top of it. I mean, it's
and she's also used to getting the apologies.
It sure is fun being purer than everybody else.
Right.
But does this person realize that Donald Trump in South Carolina, 20% of the voters who voted for Donald Trump disagree with the Emancipation Proclamation?
Right.
And this is who you're going after? This is where we start the battle, you fucking idiots.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't think, wait a minute.
Tell you why.
Bill, I don't think they were calling, let's be fair, just like when Kanye West said George Bush doesn't care about black people, he didn't call him a racist, although George Bush heard racist. They're not claiming the Black Lives Matter that Hillary is a racist. What they're saying is that negative racial consequences flowed from mass incarceration. And by the way, when they accused her of talking about the super predator, which she did, let's note the fact she apologized. Bernie Sanders...
And it was taken out of context.
But not only
she was not saying black people are predators.
No. She was saying super predators, the language that John DeLuia or somebody was using about black criminals during the second... But here's my point. She at least apologized and acknowledged that that was a problem. But I'm saying I think it's sexist for people to impute to Hillary Clinton what her husband did. Her husband was the president of the United States of America, not Hillary Clinton.
That's right.
Right. Now, but I'm not mad at...
But one party does not even acknowledge that racism even exists. They say it's an urban myth.
No. You're right. But see, that show what the Black Lives Matter implicitly are proving the humanity of the Democrats, because at least they're humane enough to respond in kind to them. The Republicans don't give a flying damn about what's going on there, and therefore they prove their inhumanity.
Plus,
so in one sense, they're affirming it.
And George Bush is the party that has the party that was supposed to be for black people has let them down continuously, and that's what the Black Lives Matter movement is going after the Democrats, because they're the ones who are supposed to be on their side.
Exploiting them, taking them for granted.
Republicans.
Taking them for granted. So look, but as a person who believes that Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States of America, I'm telling you from a sympathetic position, there is no problem with Black Lives Matter challenging them, because the Democrats have had a history, as Brother Ruffalo has said, of exploiting those black people. But at the end of the day, I think that Hillary Clinton is not only the smartest person, the most prepared person, but the person who has given the most credible empirical analysis of race in the last 20 years by a major American politician. I'll stand by that. Absolutely. That's right.
People need to learn the difference between an imperfect friend and a deadly enemy.
No doubt.
You want to tear Hillary Clinton down? Great. Then enjoy President Trump.
Yeah.
You only get two choices in America. Two choices.
But there's at the front of thinking about, right? Because if you're not there showing your issues, someone else is there instead, being allowed to...
I think when you turn around on the crowd, she's the only black person there. And this is a $500 a plate fundraiser.
And we wouldn't be talking about this unless they
Why is that a problem? Do they have to be everywhere giving you money?
Who's they?
The black people? Really? I can't.
Yes, we should be everywhere. Yes, we should be. No.
I can't use the term they
come on,
when
man.
that makes me a racist?
Come on, Bill.
Yeah, I'm the problem too.
You know I'm not.
No.
Okay. Not at all. But what I'm saying,
you reacted when I said they.
No. I didn't react. That was not me, bro. That was him.
Me.
That was him. I know I'm a light-skinned Negro, but I'm not a white guy. Okay.
But they all look alike.
Bill. No. Actually, I'm simple.
So, first of all, Bill Maher didn't just say they. He said, do they have to be everywhere? Which, I don't know. The statement is like a little borderline racist, which doesn't mean Bill Maher is a racist. That was his like straw man at the beginning, that Hillary Clinton is a racist because she used this language from the mid-'90s about super predators. I was in law school in the mid-'90s, and I remember that whole like super predator thing, that we're raising a generation of super predators in our inner cities who are going to take over. And, the whole thing never happened. Actually, our crime rate went way down, and it doesn't really line up with the mass incarceration. Even as our incarceration continued to go up and up, our crime, after the crime level went down and then leveled off, our incarceration level rate continued to go up. So it's a big mess. And I think Hillary, I agree with what most everyone said there, though. Do you notice that Joanna Cole's woman, who's the editor of Cosmo, at one point, she said, well, at least they let this activist in. Well, as someone pointed out a little later, it was actually like a $500 a plate fundraiser where you have to make a donation, and they actually paid $500 to get in there. And Mark Ruffalo also pointed out something in the comment section of my Facebook page. If you go to where I posted the video, one of my Facebook fans, and I have almost 10,000 Facebook fans now. I think his name is K Lore. I don't know how you pronounce K-A-O. Is that Cow? K-O? Anyway, he posted a picture of the group that Hillary Clinton was talking to, and it's like what Mark Ruffalo said. They were all white. There was like no people of color there. So I think it is good, kind of like what Michael Eric Dyson was saying, and I don't often agree with him, but I think it takes the Democratic candidates to task and make sure that they have the right positions on these issues before they get to the general election, and make sure that the Democratic Party doesn't take the black vote for granted. They've been getting like 85-90% of the black vote for many years, and who's that whole 4 or 5 minute exchange, that thing. I want to move on. Lost the black, going to do about it, and he agrees he lost the black vote. There may be the word decimated here somewhere, but says and he mentioned.
I saw that vote in the African American community, something like 85% for Hillary Clinton. You've got going forward about 25% of the voters in the Democratic primaries are African Americans. Aren't you going to have to do much better, reach out to that community to have a chance for this nomination?
Absolutely. But I do think, no argument with you, you're correct. But I think you're going to see us doing, and I think the polls indicated, much better within the African American community outside of the Deep South. They're going to see us much better in New York State, where I think we have a shot to win, in California and in Michigan. But you're right, we're going to have to do a lot better. But I think what we are doing is putting together a coalition of working class people, of young people, of many other folks who understand that the economy today is not working for the middle class, it's working for the people on top. People who have strong reservations about Secretary Clinton's foreign policy, her vote for the war in Iraq. So we think we have come a long way. We think we got a lot of work in front of us, but...
So, I don't know. Like I said, I'm getting more pessimistic. You heard Bernie Sanders kind of give a slight version of his pathway at the end of that answer. And one of the sad things about it is in this last clip of Bernie Sanders, this is from CBS's Face the Nation. It's a poll result that John Dickerson asked Bernie Sanders about, showing that Bernie Sanders is thought almost by like 30 points to be more honest than Hillary Clinton, but then he's not winning, which kind of shows that voters don't really care to some extent whether their politicians are honest. I guess they just don't expect politicians to be honest. But you can see after you watch the last Bernie Sanders clip of the night over here.
In the future, yeah.
Our poll, bright spot for honest. What does it say to you, though, that voters...
For a number of reasons. I think if you look at your polls, you'll probably find that many, many people think that our views are closer to what they believe the future of America should be, that our views are closer on economic issues. And a lot of those polls come down to demographics, to age, to how much money you are making. Mine is weeks that actually had us in the lead or reasonably close to Secretary Clinton. If you were with me yesterday in Texas, you would have seen 10,000 people out in Austin, 8,000 people out in Dallas. We had a wonderful turnout here in Rochester, Minnesota last night. I believe we have a lot of momentum. You know, sometimes the media says, well, this state had an election, it's the end. We have done.
For being with us.
About voters having a lot of reasons why they make up their minds, and honesty may not be their top reason, and apparently it isn't given those poll results. But I just am starting to lose hope in Bernie Sanders actually winning the Democratic nomination. He may keep building up delegates and going all the way to the convention and fighting for his message, and that was something I talked about on the broadcast last week, where I think he was asked a question about whether he's a message candidate. You can let me know what you think, and you can let me know what you think about the clips from the Democratic side, from the Republican side. I'm all done with the 2016 presidential race. I have one more clip. This is on the subject of Apple versus FBI. So Apple versus FBI, I talked about this last week. The FBI is trying to get Apple to write software for a back door to open up the iPhone. A lot of people think it's like the lawyer of one of the terrorists, and they give permission. So there's no like the owner saying go ahead. There's no Fourth Amendment issue. It has to do with making Apple work for it, you know, and it's not like they can go into Apple and take what they want. This key doesn't exist. This software doesn't exist. It's under this 1789 law, the All Writs Act, that says you can make private companies work for the government and for like wartime purposes. I can't remember. I haven't read the National Writs. I just saw some commentary on this. I should have actually read it. But anyway, it is kind of dangerous, and I was kind of surprised to see the former head of the NSA and the former head of the CIA, Michael Hayden, over on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, take a position much closer to my position than Bill Maher did. This is like another instance of Bill Maher going way to the right on the national security versus privacy and civil liberties balance, and I think it has something to do with his hatred for liberals, which he sees liberals as the people who buy Apple products, as I will discuss after you watch this last clip for the broadcast tonight over here.
News that are right in your wheelhouse. Apple.
Yeah.
Somehow on the side, it looks like to some people, of the terrorists because they have the phone of the San Bernardino killer, and the government wants them to crack it open and see what it says, and they refuse.
Yeah, there's virtue on both sides, but on the big question, I actually slide towards Apple. All right?
What? We're going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
That is a real problem.
So look, Tim Cook's position is that America is more secure with end-to-end unbreakable encryption, and he's right. All right. And so if you put a door into any encrypted product, look, you described what I was, the director of NSA. When I know someone's put a door into a product, into an encryption system, all right, somewhere, an additional entry point, my odds of success of breaking through there go up. So my first response is when somebody's put a door in there, for whatever legitimate reason, is thank you, Lord, because I can more easily attack the encryption. And there are a whole bunch of security services around the world who think the same way. So on balance, unbreakable end-to-end encryption, we're far better off. Now, forward over here to San Bernardino. I've got one phone, one instrument, one time, one court order, all right? I think Comey needs to make the argument that this doesn't lead to that this is a separable event, that the Apple attempt to do what they have to do here doesn't lead to a precedent that creates this. And Jim Comey, the director of the FBI, isn't helped when other people say, and after you're done with the San Bernardino phone, I've got 9 more around the country, and the U.S. attorney in Manhattan says, and I got a room full of them, I got 175 I want you to break into, all right? And so I see these as several
What if the San
events.
Bernardino killer was still on the loose?
Well, I mean,
would that change it?
As I try to say in the book, it's all gray. You know, there are always trade-offs. That does up the power of this argument over here for going in. But fundamentally, and you may find things here that actually keep us safe going forward. But a lot of this is going to be forensics. A lot of this is going to be looking back.
All right, now let's talk about that big applause for Apple. I think people in this country are spoiled. I think they're uninformed. I don't think they really know what the threats are out there. I think partly it's a victim of you're a victim of your own success. That, I mean, 9/11 was pretty horrible, but compared to what happens in the rest of the world often, we've gotten away pretty easy. I don't think people really think about the fact that there are a lot of people looking for nuclear weapons, that they would use them right here in this country, and that having your pictures safe would be wouldn't really stack up to being killed by a nuclear event here in Los Angeles or any other major city. Do you feel underappreciated sometimes?
We have when we start to whine a little bit, all right, about our position within the American society, we've got a summation of it. And it's generally not the people outside the Beltway. It's kind of confined to political elites. And it's simply this, Bill. People accuse the American security services of not doing enough when they feel in danger. And as soon as we've made them feel safe again, they begin to complain that we're just doing too much.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, when I cut that clip, I realized he got a big audience applause on that. And that one, I don't know, I actually try to be skeptical whether I think it's a dangerous world or not. I'm trying to be skeptical of the NSA and the CIA. And I was actually impressed with most of Michael Hayden's answer there. Not Bill Maher understand the need for end-to-end encryption and not having the government be able to have some backdoor into all of our cell phones where they can break our passcode and look at the phone. Here in California, we passed a Digital Privacy Act that means that police have to get a warrant before they go into your cell phone, and there's some case law to that effect as well. And one thing that General Michael Hayden says Apple case is, even if they say they're only disabled, doesn't try the passcode, the four-digit passcode as many times as they want without disabling the phone or slowing down the number of times they can put in the passcode. that's the software they want. If they write that and they say, oh, we're only going to use it for this one phone, or 106 Manhattan D mention. But the other thing Michael Hayden mentioned is, if you think if they create that software, that somewhere along the line the NSA isn't going to like steal it and modify it to use on every cell phone. From all the things we've learned from Edward Snowden, over here there's another book I haven't pointed to in a while, right by the Paul Robinette Renetto hashtag LiberalViewer candles right there. No Place to Hide. That's Glenn Greenwald's book about the Edward Snowden leaks, and there's a lot of information about what's in those leaks in the book. And if you read that book, you will definitely think there's a high probability that somewhere along the way they're going to steal that back door, and they're going to use it on every iPhone they get their hands on, and every iPhone, who knows? I mean, they're collecting all of our like phone bills with our metadata, so they'll collect whatever they can. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I seem to have gotten through this entire broadcast without any copyright claims. I don't know why the networks seem to really have a lot more proprietary interest in these debates, even though I think they're actually much more newsworthy, of public importance, and they're the actual candidates speaking. They should be a fair use claim that one of the four prongs of the fair use test is much stronger. The nature of the copyrighted work, it's public, political. The Sunday morning shows, at least, no copyright claims so far. If you want to help support my channel, there's a link down to my Patreon page where you can become one of my patrons. That means I don't have to depend on YouTube for advertising income, or through YouTube. There, if you hover your mouse over this corner of the video, there's a little eye where you can give me fan funding if you want to support my channel that way. I also appreciate all of you who comment, who join me for the live show, recorded show, who share my video, who on social media, who give me encouragement, or just criticize what I'm doing. Let me know. I actually think your comments tie into the whole fair use thing. I even said that in my email to CBS that I sent on Monday. I'm hanging by a copyright thread. I'm waiting to see whether CBS takes down my videos and gives me strikes. I'm waiting to see why that debate blocked video that I then disputed didn't take me to the next level where I lose features. But so far, so good. I'll at least be hoping to see you next week, the first LiberalViewer Sunday Live clip roundup of March, probably around the same time, until I have time to finish some other video, which I may be able to do this week. But until then, I guess I'll just be seeing all of you around the internet.